Today we're going to talk about a topic that's quite different on the channel. It's going to be a little bit of fun to talk about these fragrances because a lot of these fragrances I actually didn't like them. So these are fragrances that I once hated for one reason or another, and now I actually love them. It's really cool to see how, number one, your taste may change, and number two, to check out some fragrances that you perhaps never heard of. So stick around. Fragrances that I hated once and now love, coming up right now. Your tastes do change with time. Like I said in the beginning, hopefully for the best, but today, without any further ado, I'm going to share with you some really cool fragrances that I once hated and now I really, really love. Starting with the first fragrance here from Calvin Klein. This is a fragrance that's going to be a heavy, powerful, woody, oriental, spicy type of a fragrance. Very popular in the 80s and 90s. I went to high school in the mid to late 90s, and this fragrance was very popular among guys. This and ENCRE, where I lived here in New York, Connecticut area, believe it or not, a lot of guys were rocking this for clubbing, for night outs, for winter cotillions. This is one of the go-to fragrances for them, and I couldn't get past the initial blast. It was just really pungent, really powerful to my taste. It just turned my stomach. It made me sick to my stomach. It just nauseated me, and I couldn't bear this fragrance. And I'm talking about Calvin Klein's CK Obsession. I know some of you guys love this fragrance. This is a vintage bottle, I think, from the 90s. It was first introduced in 1986. It's a classic. It's an amazing fragrance. If you guys don't know about it, I'm doing a classic, iconic, classic, timeless fragrances series on this channel. If you haven't checked it out, I'm going to pop it up here for you guys. And I'm also doing a series with Persolays actually going through the decades, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s. This is probably one that's definitely going to be talked about. But it goes to show that once I couldn't stand this fragrance, now I really love. I actually have a current formulation which is a lot tamed, a lot toned down. It's nothing like what this fragrance used to be here. If you manage to get an earlier bottle of this fragrance from the 80s and 90s, you're really going to experience the amazingness of this extremely amazing oriental, woody, spicy type of a fragrance. If you can get past the initial blast, it's got an amazing combination of notes. It has lavender, it got some spices in the heart, has pine needle, which I love. It's resonant, it's a little bit coniferous. I think the heart into the dry down is really where this fragrance shined on my skin. But as I smell this in other people, I could never get past the point that I wanted to get a bottle for myself. It goes to show, guys, live with that fragrance, try it on skin, you might be surprised. So this here Obsession, CK Obsession, is definitely one that I hated and now I love. Next up, we have a fragrance from 2006. I actually bought this fragrance for the first time. I purchased this and I actually paid full retail for this fragrance, only to be completely disappointed on the fragrance. I couldn't get past the initial inky vibe that was very dark and very resinous. It really, and I'm a big vetiver fan, as you guys know. I'm a big vetiver lover, but this particular fragrance, I couldn't get past the initial blast. And I'm talking about ENCRE Noir, which literally put LALIQUE in the map. This fragrance here is definitely considered by the fragrance community a masterpiece. And like I said, a fragrance that really put LALIQUE on the map. Now, this is a great vetiver fragrance. It's earthy, it's definitely resinous, it's definitely smoky. But I'm telling you guys, if you can get past the initial blast of 35-40 minutes, the heart of this fragrance into the dry down is just heavenly. It dries down, works beautifully with my body chemistry. Once I gave this fragrance a chance, and the funny thing about this one is I actually bought it retail. I traded, with some people in the fragrance community, only to repurchase this fragrance and really experience it again and fall in love with it because I really had to try it on skin. I was reading things, I was watching videos about this fragrance. I was like, why did I hate this fragrance so much? I just tried it for once, didn't give the proper wearing, and it goes to show again, your taste will develop, will change, and I think this particular fragrance is definitely more mature, and you must really appreciate vetiver fragrances. You must like heavy, earthy, you must love vetiver, period. I think if you're a vetiver lover, you're gonna love this fragrance. If you like Terre Hermès, perhaps, from Hermès, you're going to appreciate this fragrance. I believe they both were released in the same year. I like this one a little bit better. I love the woody, resinous dry down of this fragrance. It's just incredible. One of my favorite vetiver fragrances of all time. I did a vetiver playlist for you guys, which included, I think, 50 vetiver fragrances of all time. I'll pop that up here. Go check out that playlist. This is definitely one of my top vetiver fragrances of all time. And if you love vetiver, give this one a chance. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised, especially because you can actually find this very cheap out there at discounters. Check out ENCRE Noir from LALIQUE. Definitely a great one that I hated, now I do love. Speaking of blind buys and fragrances that were very hard to find here in the US, I actually had to purchase this from a GUERLAIN boutique in Canada. They shipped to me. I actually bought 2 bottles. I was very excited to get this fragrance. There was a guy here in the fragrance community, and again, if you're part of the community for at least a decade, you heard of this guy. His name is Hiro Yorozuka, aka Miguel, or Hiro. He was very famous to be a very hype kind of a guy. He would hype up a lot of fragrances, and this was definitely one of the fragrances that he hyped up, and it was very hard to find. People were paying $200 to $300, you know, when they were buying this fragrance back in the day. We're talking about 2010, between 2009 and 2011, you know, was when this fragrance was really hyped in the fragrance community. People were crossing the border into Canada, bringing fragrances here into the US, only to resell it for like I said, you know, $150, $200 per bottle. I was able to find it. I think it was about $75 at the boutique, Canadian. I bought 2 bottles. They shipped it to me here to the US. You know, it was summertime, around June, July. It was a blind buy. I wore the fragrance. I hated it. It was too strong. It was too, it was just too bold for my taste. You know, it had this mandarin orange kind of a feel with a cocoa vibe. I thought it was really out of place. I couldn't understand the fragrance. And again, it was summertime. Gave me a headache. You know, if you go back, the funny thing, if you go back to one of my first videos here on YouTube back in 2012, I actually had it on my sale and swap list. I wanted to trade or sell both bottles, which I ended up doing right away. As soon as I posted, people, you know, took it right away. I was like, I'll take it from you. Only to about a month and a half, 2 months later, I purchased it again, bought it retail, only to fall in love with the fragrance because it was a few months later. I waited until about winter time. It was late fall. It was like late October, early November. Fell in love with the fragrance. Again, goes to show you should also consider wearing the fragrance at the right time. And I'm talking about LIDGE L'Instant de Guerlain Extreme. This is an extremely great fragrance from Guerlain. If you love patchouli, this has a chocolatey patchouli along with a cocoa, you know, note in here. Also has this beautiful mandarin oranges up top with the girly nod, which is very particular to Guerlain fragrances, which is a combination of vanilla and other elements. Very resinous, very beautiful. If you can manage to find one that has the dark ridges, which is the vintage formulation, it's even beastly in performance. A great fragrance. One that I would still consider to this day paying $125 to $150 if I found a vintage bottle like this, because it is definitely one of my favorite designer fragrances. It's really, I mean, Guerlain, you can consider it to be a niche fragrance because all they do is fragrance. They don't have like clothing or anything else. But because it's like their main line, I consider this a designer fragrance, but it's niche quality, amazing combination of notes, very unique, nothing like this fragrance out there, guys. LIDGE from Guerlain, something that I hated because, again, I wore it at the wrong time, and now I truly love, and it became one of my favorite designer, you know, top fragrances of all time. This next one is another fragrance that was also hyped up by this guy, Hiro Yorozuka, that I followed back in the day. And this fragrance here, again, another blind buy, bought retail and tried it at the wrong time. I bought this back in July, I believe of 2010. And man, I almost threw up. I was wearing this in the car. I oversprayed. It was really hot. I couldn't bear this fragrance. I actually traded. And luckily enough, I bought 2 bottles. So I had a sealed bottle that I kept, but the open bottle, you know, was just sprayed a few times. I was able to sell it pretty good on the groups. But then I managed to try the bottle that I kept when it got cold out in the dead of winter time, because I heard it was the proper time to wear this fragrance. I definitely pull it out, and I was in heaven when I tried this fragrance. And I'll be honest with you, the initial blast, the first 30 minutes, 40 minutes, even an hour plus, will be a little bit off-putting to some people. It's a little bit animalistic. There's a ton of musks in here, spices. But if you manage to wear it, you know, in the cold weather and you get past the first hour, the magic do begin. I'm talking about Maurice Roussel's Frederic Malle's Musk Ravageur. Another thing also about the reformulation, I think this has been formulated a couple of times. The corn formulation now has a lot less of the musk animalistic note that you get here, but the vintage bottle, like this one here that has this, you know, matte finish cap, has a very animalistic, you know, musk at the beginning, which actually surrounds the whole composition. But that musk is going to be very animalistic along with cinnamon and cloves, and a lot of people will not be able to get past that first hour. But if you have it in you to get past, the magic do begin. It gets really beautiful, resinous, vanilla, cinnabon kind of a vibe. It's really inviting, very sensual, very warm. One of those fragrances that I absolutely love. And the people that know me for wearing this fragrance in the dead of winter, they know what I'm wearing this because it smells amazing with my body chemistry. Musk Ravageur, definitely a classic. It was released in 2000. I think it's one of the best, you know, my favorite top 5 Frederic Malles of all time. And it's another one that I would actually keep in my top, you know, 10 for life. I think I just did a video like that for you guys, and I definitely kept this one as one of my 10 for life fragrances that I would never be able to get rid of. It goes to show I hated it, now I love it. And last but not least, this very last one here is going to be a masterpiece of a fragrance. I remember buying a couple of fragrances from the DIOR Privé, La Collection Privé, which is now called Maison Christian Dior. Back in the day, their fragrances were very powerful. I remember buying, I think I purchased Vetiver, and I think I purchased Granville, I want to say. Both purchased from the Dior boutique, and they sent me a whole bunch of really different and obscure releases from this collection that I had never tried. Kurkdjian was one of them, and Eau Noire was the other one. And let me tell you guys, this particular fragrance had a very different construction. The nose behind this one is an amazing master perfumer that I do love. One that you may know called Francis Kurkdjian, aka Maison Francis Kurkdjian, which is his niche fragrance house, which is very renowned, very famous niche fragrance house in the world. And the fragrance I'm talking about is Eau Noire. Now this fragrance, guys, is a fragrance that I wear very gingerly these days because it has been discontinued, but this is a big 8.4 ounce bottle, so it's gonna last me a long time. It's a very different take on the lavender type of a fragrance, which I do love lavenders. This one here is a very dark herbal lavender. There's a whole bunch of herbal notes up top, like sage, like thyme, for example. The mid, you have a beautiful note of green coffee along with a green style lavender, which is really uncanny. There's licorice here, which makes this even darker, very pungent and hard to understand. The base, you have leather, vanilla, violet. Now, one thing about this fragrance is it has a gorgeous note of immortelle. Now, immortelle is a flower that has quickly become one of my favorite, you know, floral notes of all time. Now, this is the reason why I love immortelle. Immortelle gives off this burnt sugar, brown sugar kind of a vibe, which is like a golden, you know, tobacco slash hay, like a roasted hay note, which let me tell you guys, from the heart into the dry down, this stuff here is an absolute stunning fragrance. The beginning is going to turn you off, especially if you never try this fragrance. Like I said, when I got this sample with the fragrances that I bought from Dior, La Collection Privé, I couldn't stand the fragrance. I actually put it on my hand. I was like, what is this thing? It's got this kind of metallic bacon kind of a you know, accord in the beginning. Really hard to understand, but as I wore this fragrance time and time again, this little sample that I've gotten, I grew to love this fragrance, and I had to get a bottle of this fragrance, which again, very hard to find, discontinued. I was able to find in the fragrance groups, which, by the way, if you guys are not part of fragrance groups, you guys are missing out. I'm going to leave a link here to the fragrance group that I have, which is the Emporium of Scent, which has almost 23,000 members and counting. It's a great group for fragrance aficionados, fragrance enthusiasts like myself. You'll find discount codes, fragrant news about new releases, you know, reviews, trades, and swaps. Just like I was able to find this fragrance here, you know, from somebody in the groups, you guys will be able to find a lot of hard to find fragrances at a great price, or you can trade it off, you can do swaps. So it's a great way for us collectors. It became one of my favorite fragrances of the La Collection Privé. I could definitely say Vetiver is my favorite one, Médecin a close second, and Eau Noire is definitely my third favorite from La Collection Privé. Amazing fragrance, masterpiece from Francis Kurkdjian. I would love it if he released this fragrance again, perhaps part of his collection in the MFK Maison Francis Kurkdjian fragrance releases. But it goes to show, guys, another one that I couldn't stand in the beginning and grew to love the fragrance as I wore it more and more. Let me know in the like if you appreciate the content. Please don't forget to show your support, like this video, touch the little subscriber button for me, and hit the little icon, little bell icon, so you guys get videos like these straight into your feed. Also, let me know down in the comments which fragrances you guys once hated and now you love, you can't live without. I'd love to read some of your fragrances, perhaps. You know, I'll try some fragrances that I haven't tried yet, and you know, we'll have some fragrances in common that I actually hated and now I love. So please, guys, sound off in the comments. Let me know your experience, some of your, you know, situations with blind buys, you know, fragrances that you couldn't stand and now you truly appreciate. Guys, as always, remember, fragrance is an extension of who you are, enhances your mood, enhances your character. So please be sure to choose your fragrances wisely, and of course, as always, wear it well. Guys, have an awesome day. Stay tuned for a lot more. I'll see you guys right back here real soon. Take care.